the eternal plumber and all these different people. Well, I actually, long story short, I called some people over, and as a ruse, a bit of a honeypot. And now I have, for the last couple days, I have an electrician and a plumber tied up in a shack here in the Everglades. And I think I'm gonna torture them. But hey, hear me out. I'm gonna torture them for information, okay? But also, like, I'm not really like a blood and guts kind of guy, you know. I don't even really like the Saw movies, so I'm thinking more like I'll like just talk to them a bunch, you know. What do people not like to hear? I'm sure they would not enjoy hearing extensively about my childhood. You know, maybe if I cry a lot. I think the idea is just to make them so uncomfortable that they would like to just leave. And if that doesn't work, maybe we'll try some waterboarding. Otherwise, I'm not sure. I could try cutting their hair or something like that. But if anybody has any ideas, you know, I'm not really in a rush either, to be honest. So just go ahead and like give me some ideas, and then maybe I will use some of those ideas. Okay. All right. Well, I should maybe consider like feeding these guys or something. Listen, hear me out. I know it sounds bad, but like these guys are super evil. They're like part of the Illuminati. So don't worry. We're gonna get to the bottom of this. Jeff Mamba, Mind Jockey. Over and out.
Gravity got you down. Do you not understand the difference between a wave or a particle? What about the planets? How do all those rotate around each other? Laws of physics and other sciences can be confusing. So the next time you're curious just how exactly E equals MC squared, hire a highly trained and qualified professional. That's right, it's Space Lawyers. Space lawyers are skilled in litigation with the laws of time, space, cosmic ghost pirates, and various other lawyerings. Each space lawyer has a PhD in space law from the Cosmic Hall of Space Justice, and they can get you out of just about any sticky situation. So stop bonking your head on things, or accidentally creating big bangs with your haphazard studies in quantum physics. Leave all of that to the highly trained professionals prepared to litigate these laws for you. Just call 1-800-SPACELAWYER.com for more info.
Space lawyer?
Space lawyers cannot be used in a regular court of law. They can only accept cash and no cosmic traveler checks nor Visa debit cards. Please wait up to 4 cosmic business days for our space lawyers to get back to you.
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. As a part of a family amongst lords of consciousness, I'm the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Oh, broadcasting live from a shack on a hill, a small hill, in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void live. Once again, it's Wednesday night, September the 11th, 2024, a day to remember for sure, but also a day that we would like to put in the past, but we'll never forget it. So, heart goes out still to this very day to all the victims of September 11th. There's no way of getting around it every year. Talked to somebody today and they're like, man, I would like to just forget it. I would like to put it in the past and all this other stuff, but it's, it's kind of hard to, man. That was a devastating thing. I remember. I remember where I was. I was working on a construction site for my Uncle Ted. I think it was 2021, man, and not 2021, but what year was that? 2001. Anyways, I was working in construction, framing houses, and my Uncle Ted pulled up on the job site, and he was freaking out. He's like, everybody needs to go to the gas stations, and check it out, man. Get as much gas as you can because we're at war. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't know what he was talking about. And I was in Arkansas, not New York. But people were freaking out here too. Like when I went to the gas station, they were all, I remember lined up and some of the gas stations were jacking the prices up, because of it. It was crazy, man. I didn't even actually see what happened to the towers until I got home later that evening from work and was watching or rewatching what happened. And that was, I think, traumatic for all of us. So it'll always be stuck in our minds and trippy thing, man. But yeah, so a blessing to all those people still to this day. Now, I have been getting some feedback on the tarot videos that I've been putting out. I appreciate that feedback. I'm trying to do better visually for those things because they're roughly about an hour long for each card that I do, and to sit there and stare at the same thing, The last video I actually did a slideshow where I showed the emanations that went into the Vesica Pisces when we were talking about the universe card, but I'll try to get it better, But for the most part, people are asking, to keep doing it, so I'll keep doing it. I'll try to get one of those up a week for you guys. So between that, the show, putting out stuff for the supporters and the patrons, the patron supporter podcast and all the stuff, and plus, having to work and everything, it's crazy. You still have to do your daily whatever you do. I hope most of you are doing some kind of daily practice, whether it's meditation, prayer, ritual, at the very least brushing your teeth every morning. God forbid you don't do that. Some form of ritual every day. And something that I've realized since I ditched the cell phone for a while, and you hear this all the freaking time, but it's so true, man. Getting out in nature, even if it's just for 20 minutes. I don't mean you have to go to the desert or go to the Amazon jungle or whatever. You can just walk down the road or get around some trees, but just 20, 30 minutes a day, man. I'm one of those people that I stay in front of the computer so much that I have to or I'll go crazy. What's up, Grant, Cosmic Dan, Sir Wolf, Domek? What's happening? So I'm still fascinated with this Verdun guy, Pretty cool guy. I talked to Tamishi last night about some of this stuff after the show too in the Discord. But he seems like kind of like a wacky, crazy scientist about it because he's super analytical, right? And yesterday we talked about some of his rules and laws of astral travel. Can you imagine, just for a moment though, what it would be like to be like him in the 1920s? You know, the roaring 20s. It's weird nowadays if I go around talking about astral travel to certain people. I can't imagine what it would be like in the 20s. But he says that about instability when it comes to getting out of body. Domek, you say I drive far every day. How do you drive fat? What? How do you drive fat? What does that mean? Oh, far. He probably wrote the wrong word or something. So I have found that Domek ain't fat. As a rule, he says, the subconscious frees the phantom from catalepsy at the end of chord activity range. So this is where I get confused, man. Like this whole astral chord thing, I have never seen it, never found it, but I'm going to start looking for it. I haven't gotten a full-fledged like etheric conscious projection that's been really good in a while, but I'm waiting until it's like a really, really good one. And then I'm going to dig for this sumbitch. I'm going to find, and I'm going to let you know too, whether this chord thing is a real thing or not. You know, I have to. I think it's because I just haven't been looking for it. Because according to him, the chord stretches from your third eye, from your physical brain, into the back of your cerebral cortex, kind of like the Matrix, into your etheric double. And I've showed you guys pictures of that where he shows that. It's pretty wild. But he says when motivity is restored to the projected body within this range, it's almost certain that interiorization will come instantly for one who's conscious and an amateur. I bet he thinks we're all amateurs, right? So he says, I will detail what takes place when the phantom is freed from catalepsy within chord activity range. Remember, catalepsy, according to him, is paralysis, right? So he says, suppose the astral body is projected and upright at a distance about 8 feet from the physical body. So you've gotten out of body, you're about 8 feet away. It is within chord activity range, and there's this kind of pull and push in the astral cable that he feels. Anybody that's been out of body has felt that, though. It's kind of like a weird gravitational pull back to your body, right? What's up, Grant? Grant gets out. Still working on the Grant Gets Out t-shirt, by the way. It is within chord activity range, and there are a push and pull on the astral cable. Now, if the phantom were endowed with its motive powers here, it would act very much like a staggering drunkard or like a child learning to walk, being thrown from one side to the other. Emotions would be stirred, and the phantom would become cataleptic again, pulled into the horizontal, over the physical, and dropped into it. So what he's saying is if we get out of body and we start getting all emotional, we get unbalanced, what's going to happen is our astral body will become cataleptic or paralyzed, just like our body, and we'll get sucked back into the body, so to speak. There are so many individual functions, complex in themselves, and working simultaneously during an act of astral projection that I wonder if I'm not muddling the listener, we'll call it, a little. So it should be remembered that most of these functions take place within chord activity range. Most of the stuff we're talking about, according to Voldoon, all takes place as long as you got that cord strapped to you. He says, I'm still working on getting out. Hell yeah. So in reality, a perfect projection could not be considered such if within chord activity range, even though the etheric entity were entirely separated from the material one. The material one. So the range of chord activity seems to be unknown to a lot of people. And in fact, so far as I'm aware, no one has ever given an explanation of it or even mentioned it before. And it's my personal opinion that most experimenters in this field do not even know that chord activity exists. Well, yeah, I'm one of those people because I don't know either. Believing that the phantom is free the moment it leaves the physical body. Well, I mean, come on, dude. Like, there's a couple of things that you said. You said, one, that the cord leaves the third eye from the physical body into the cerebral cortex of the etheric body. I've never known any other out-of-body person to say that. Doesn't mean he's wrong. Okay? Doesn't mean he's wrong. And two, he also said when you're moving around in your astral body, you have kind of like this glowy, fuzzy stuff. So when you move, it kind of leaves this little ghost poofs, I guess you would call it, scintillations. That's what he called it. He could be right, but I mean, he could be right. I have no way to prove this wrong. I have to look for it. I've never looked for it. But again, how often do you look? You're right. How often do you look behind your head? Think about it. How many times in your life have you like, I wonder what's back there, right here back in my head? Never. So I'm going to do it. It is not so probable that the student attempting astral projection will become liberated from paralysis or gifted with motivity or be conscious and have perfect sense functioning while inside the range of the cord. It seldom happens. The fact that mediums possessing the ability to project consciously have never told of the eccentric working of the cable is weighty evidence that they have never been perfectly normal while within cord activity range. I believe that the subconscious has a definite plan for projecting the astral body, and if this works correctly, as the subconscious intends it to, normalcy will not appear in the phantom until at the end of or outside of cord activity range. So I think what he's saying here is basically we have to get, once we do get out, we have to get as far away from the body as possible. There is no fixed time required for the astral body to move from the coincidence of the body to the end of cord activity range. The temperament of the individual governs this. Some people are of such a makeup naturally possessing strong positive factors tending toward projection, and they can move out rapidly. Like, let's go. Those people are like, let's go. Now, sometimes being even unable to stop themselves, such individuals experience unintentional projections very often when asleep at night, being the usual time. I would say these are more like the fiery people, right? Others can move out slowly, but through a chance intervention of positive factors or by intentionally inducing these factors. There's still others who, while appearing perfectly conscious, healthy, and even when walking, will have factors set in which are positively favorable to projection. I don't see how he knows this. Because in the beginning of this book, all he talked about was just his experience. So how does he know this about other people? Unless he'd been going to groups. Maybe he'll talk about that in the book. So the physical will begin to move. Actually, the etheric will begin to shake, is what he says first. Reel. And unbind itself from its physical counterpart. That's what that shaking, I think one person said it was like a earthquake sound, right? For me, it's like a vibration. But the etheric will begin to shake or reel and unbind itself from its physical counterpart. The physical will begin to move, twist, and tremble. Next, the etheric will become paralyzed. Your actual etheric double will become paralyzed, but also ready to move out. The physical will become also. And then the etheric separates, and the physical falls in a relaxed heap, like a heap of meat, right? So this is commonly called epilepsy. I think we read this part. He said, for the past years, I've been in the close contact with that disease. So yeah, we'll skip this part. But we don't have epilepsy. But it does make me think, like, makes me wonder when people are like, man, I hear earthquakes. Or I see, what was another person telling me that they heard ringing in their ears? I don't want people to get that confused with regular out-of-body projection. But in this chapter, he does talk about how people that have epilepsy, even schizophrenia, things like that, are, according to him, and this guy is not a doctor, by the way, but according to him, are just people's astral bodies not being able to sustain a perfect coincidence with their physical body, and that's it. If any of you guys can relate to that, let me know. I mean, I don't know. Most people aren't going to admit they have some kind of mental disability, but I still think it would be cool to know if you would let me know about this stuff. You can DM me. It doesn't matter. You can use a fake name. I'm just fascinated by it all. So if we get into the purpose of sleep is what he wants to get into next. DG, smell, colors, and taste numbers. What? Who did that? Did I say that? I've worked with Darius. I've done Darius's course. Yeah, it's a good course. I've done Robert Bruce's course, Darius's stuff. I've done William Bielman's course. I've done Greg Doyle's course. All of that stuff works. I'm telling you, just no matter how good the rules sound, it all depends on the individual. From my experience, you know. Dan says, I've heard a massive bang and it scared the shit out of me. Like as you were coming out of body, you heard a massive bang? Really? That's the first I've heard of that one. So he says, separation and discoincidence. And when he says, he's spelling it discoincidence, but saying it like discoincidence with the body. So he says separation, let's just call it separations, has been used more or less as synonymous terms. So just say fucking separation then. Stop using stupid words. Although actually there's a difference in their meaning in relation to astral phenomena. The astral entity can be discoincided from the physical and yet not be separated from it. So that a clear space lies between the two. That is, the astral can be 1 inch out of coincidence. That's how he spells it. And still the bodies would be, in parts, occupy the same space. And yet these parts would not coincide with each other. So I've never experienced this, but I've kind of felt it when I was asleep. So your etheric body can kind of slip out just a little bit. Just barely. I suppose you will say if this were true, we should have known it before. But however, I tell you that every time you sleep, your astral moves slightly out of coincidence, perhaps only a fraction of an inch, perhaps more. And at any rate, there is a discoincidence during sleep, although this discoincidence may be infinitesimal and has little to do with one's ability to project, even though projection is an extension of discoincidence. One can be normal, entirely immune to the out-of-body experience, yet his astral body always slightly discoincides during sleep. Hereward Carrington was on the right track when he wrote this, quote, various theories have been advanced in the past to explain sleep, but no satisfactory theory has ever been fully accepted. Thus we have so-called chemical theories, which endeavor to account for sleep by assuming that certain poisonous substances are formed in the body during waking hours and are eliminated during sleep. Others have suggested that sleep is due to peculiar conditions of the circulation of blood in the brain, and still others that the action of certain glands explains sleep, and others that muscular relaxation accounts for it, others that the lack of external stimuli is sufficient to induce profound slumber. Now, all of these theories have been shown insufficient to explain the facts. We shall never arrive at a satisfactory theory of sleep, doubtless, until we admit the presence of a vital force and the existence of an individual human spirit, which withdraws more or less completely from the body during the hours of sleep and derives spiritual invigoration and nourishment during the time it's out of body. That's what he's saying. Hold on, I got to try something. This light is killing my eyeballs. I don't know if that's going to make it worse or not, but it's blinding me. So he says, basically what he's saying is that the biggest reason for sleep isn't just so our body can get nourishment. In the 20s, he said this, though. It's actually we sleep so our astral body can go out and grow its soul, so to speak. The soul, the etheric or astral body, never sleeps. But while it's coincided with the body, it has to deal with the world. It can't go out and be free on that higher vibration and do its thing that it needs to do. So one of the biggest reasons, and according to him, the biggest reason why we sleep is not for the physical body, but it's for the astral body. Don't know about that. That's an interesting theory. The process of unconsciousness, we do not know how unconsciousness is brought about. We do not know where the conscious mind seemingly evaporates to. We do know, however, the purpose of sleep. You would never recuperate nervous energy if the astral body conformed everlastingly to the physical and were in exact coincidence with the body all the time. You would never recover your nervous energy. And we might term this natural discoincidence, which everyone undergoes, the zone of quietude. For there is no activity of the bodies there except the natural functioning. And if you could see astrally someone sleep, you would observe the physical form, and above this, perhaps only extending a fraction of an inch beyond it, you would see an outline of the astral body. Now, remember, he's speaking of natural sleep. Normally, the astral slides out of coincidence and into coincidence again. So while you sleep, it'll come out, slide back in. Sometimes it'll go to the left, sometimes it'll go up, or it'll float down. It'll do this unnoticed by the subject going to sleep or awakening in a slow, quiet way. Yet it can do so with such speed that we cannot consciously comprehend this duration of time. And it is usually in the hypnagogic state that this occurs. And as I've said before, the subject is seldom aware of it, seldom feels it, although at a time he does, at times. Let us recall what Walsh has said regarding this, quote, "Sleep comes on gradually, the muscles slowly relaxing, and the senses become dulled. Many people, on going to sleep, experience the feeling of sliding down a hole or an incline and sometimes awaken, startled." You ever do that and just jump scared because you feel like you're falling down something? These people are of a nervous type. God, I had an ex-girlfriend that would do that all the time. It drove me nuts. Because sleeping is one of my favorite things to do, right? You just start relaxing and she just jump up, freaking out all the time. You're like, what? Every freaking night almost. So, though fatigue or slight deviation from good health may predispose to the sensation. So it's possible, by paying attention to the sensations which are psychologically present in the hypnagogic state, which I think is important, to note the relaxation of the muscles and the sinking or sliding sensation accompanying it. Wouldn't be a bad experiment to do for everybody, right? To get into the hypnagogic state and just see how you psychologically deal with it. See how long you can stay there. See how comfortable you are with that weird place. Now, if you could hold consciousness up to the last moment in the hypnagogic state, you could feel this act of discoincidence, right? So if you could hold it all the way to the very millisecond before you fell asleep, you would feel kind of your etheric body slipping a little bit. As indeed nervous and fatigued people often do feel this. And why do they? Because the astral always moves into the zone of quietude, or slightly discoincides during sleep for the purpose of charging with universal or cosmic energy. That sounds a little woo, doesn't it? MJ says, the last time I had an OBE, I was levitating and woke up as I hit my bed. Yeah, makes sense according to what Veldoon's saying. So as to this theory, that the human body is recharged with energy during the hours of rest and sleep, this is one which I myself have defended at a great length, purely from the physiological point of view. In my book, Vitality, Fasting, and Nutrition, on page 225 to 350 and elsewhere, also in the ASPR journal, The Annals of Psychic Science, in 1908. I got to read that. The theory then advanced was that the human body more nearly resembles the electric motor than it does the steam engine. And the ordinary theory that chemical combustion of food supplies the vital energy of the body is a mistake. Rather, the nervous system is recharged with vital energy during the hours of rest and sleep, and that food merely supplies broken down tissue. Any medic students here? Anybody can negate what he's saying? I mean, I can always look it up later, but arguments in support of this theory were then advanced, drawn from fasting cases and I guess daily observation, which shows us that no matter how much food we eat, there always comes a time, nevertheless, when we must rest and sleep in order to restore this energy, and that no amount of food will take the place of sleep, thus differentiating the human body from all other machines. It was also pointed out that all the accepted facts of physiology, calorimeter experiments, calorimeter experiments, could be explained just as adequately on this theory as on that commonly accepted, and further that if such a theory were true, it would enable us to accept and account for many physical phenomena which would be quite inexplicable on the ordinary materialistic theory. Yeah, so calories are supposed to give us energy, right? When they burn, or it's a unit of energy. I don't know. I got to look all this stuff up. Make sure I don't think he's totally right about all this. Deacon says, is the food even real anymore? That's a good question, right? Most of it's not. If you read it, it's the same stuff they make plastic with, and a lot of it. So, Mr. Muldoon's idea that the astral body is the condenser or accumulator or vehicle of this energy is an extension of this view, postulating the astral body as the link between the nervous system and the cosmic reservoir of energy from which the energy is drawn. Our theories dovetail together with the greatest nicety, and I cannot but feel that the teachings of orthodox physiology must ultimately be modified somewhat along these lines in order to include supernormal physical phenomena and also the reality and intermediary functioning of the astral body. Well, good luck with that. You're not going to get one real scientist to take this seriously unless they're actually working in this field. The government damn sure isn't going to back it up that we know of. I mean, look, everybody always talks about that. Oh, the CIA, Robert Monroe went to the CIA and all that. But look, if that really became something, do you think that the Monroe Institute would be asking for donations every month just to stay alive? I don't think so. I think they would have disappeared. But I'm not going down the conspiracy world with that. So in the nervous person and the fatigued or the condenser, astral body is greatly run down. That is what nervousness, according to Muldoon, really is. When the astral body is extremely run down, the astral moves out more easily, sooner, while unconsciousness follows a moment later. Hence, the subject experience the astral body movement. They'll feel it, and then they'll go unconscious. And I've done that a million times. And I don't even consider myself that nervous of a person. So, and just here another eccentric sensation is felt, the astral, where the mind really is, often gets the sensation of sinking or sliding because the sensibility is in both bodies. And the physical seems to move downwards, while as a matter of fact, the astral moves upwards. And the subject, of course, thinks that he is in the physical body, while the truth is that he is a fraction of an inch discoincided from it. So the question no doubt has presented itself in your mind. Can the subject feel this detachment of the astral when in the act of projection? Naturally, the subject would have to be conscious in order to know anything as to what is taking place. And if he is, there are certain sensations which, when once has become familiar with their significance, he will always recognize as signs of the loosening of the astral body. Well, I can tell you this, when we were talking about the laws yesterday, that made so much sense to me. But you know how yesterday when he was talking about the will, So your unconscious will wants to move your body, just like when you want to walk or whatever. Perfect example. I wish I would have said that on all the podcasts that I've been on talking about my first OBE. Because when I set up, it did not feel like anything other than what it feels like right now. I just wanted to move. And it felt exactly like my body does now. The only difference is my body was asleep. And I never went unconscious. I never, it's exactly, that's why I want to read this book, because it's exactly how Voldoon talks about it, the experience of it. But he has a lot of theories that I'm not sure have been studied scientifically. So he says one does not have to experience an extensive projection in order to know what these feelings are. He can experience them in the hypnagogic state when he's going to sleep. And if he will but concentrate his attention upon himself and try to see what is really happening as he enters sleep, in other words, if he will but train himself to keep the balance between consciousness and unconsciousness while slightly favoring the former without tension of mind, and will maintain this well into the hypnagogic state, he will feel this discoincidence as the phantom enters the zone of quietude, usually as a falling sensation or as if air suddenly accumulated under the center of his body, mostly under the stomach. A slight repercussion of body generally follows this, if conscious because of emotion. But you can't, what's up, Sudi? What's up, Jamie? You can't feel an inch, though. Like when I feel like when I'm sliding or falling in the hypnagogic state, it feels like a foot at least, or 2 feet. I don't know about an inch. Pretty fascinating stuff, though. So there's one thing more to which I would call attention. When the subconscious contemplates an extensive projection, the astral phantom is put under the spell of catalepsy. And this can take place either while in exact coincidence with the body or in the zone of quietude. If the astral body becomes cataleptic while in the exact coincidence with the physical will be cataleptic. But if it comes under this spell while the phantom is in the zone of quietude, the physical does not become cataleptic. These conditions do not develop suddenly but creep over one almost unnoticed, and the subject must be very impressionable to catch them at all. So when you experience the falling or sliding sensation when you're in the hypnagogic state and become startled, usually jumping, you may think you have been slightly conscious up to that time. But if you will observe the psychological changes very carefully, you will find that consciousness was slowly diminishing the whole time. It was slowly diminishing, almost gone. Then the sliding feeling concurrent with the startled jump, and you're conscious again. Scares you back into consciousness. And if you think about it, you will admit that for a moment, you were not sure of being conscious, if you really think about it. It was during that very brief moment of unknowingness that the subconscious will move the phantom, or the subconscious will move the phantom. Holy shit. I think he's right. I think he's right about that. Meldy Wolf. Well, y'all are into that. Melding, huh? So he's going to go into dream control here. And what I want to learn is how to slip out of a dream, because I've taken everybody's courses and I still haven't been able to do it, but how to go from a dream to my etheric double. I know how to go from laying down, falling asleep to it, but I'd like to come back from the dream. All right. So many dreams are instigated by the state of mind at this time when you slide in that hypnagogia. And you will acquire the ability to dream a certain dream, and in that dream you will often keep the body or the astral moving on instead of stopping in the zone of quietude. We shall see before finishing how an astral projector can be dreaming and suddenly become conscious and find his body projected in an environment suited to the dream. Is he talking about lucid dreaming? I've done this several times and will relate these instances later, but thus you can, by practice, produce a desired dream. This is called dreaming true and dream control as one method of producing projection of the astral phantom, and a pleasant way, too. I don't know, man. It sounds to me like he's definitely talking about stop pretending you don't want to meld. I don't want to meld, man. I have trauma from astral entities melding with me when I was a kid. I'm not trying to meld with nobody, especially two other people. So of this subject, Hereward Carrington says, there is a practical experiment which may be conducted by which true dreams can be induced. It is very important to observe yourself in the process of actual falling to sleep, to observe a consciousness while it is passing into the dream state. Was it coincidence that the term falling to sleep, or they put the term falling to sleep into use, I wonder? Or was this brought into being because of the falling sensation? If you conduct experiments of this character on yourself, you'll be enabled gradually to keep conscious control of yourself up to the moment you fall asleep. And this self-observation, the consciousness of going to sleep, is extremely interesting. That is kind of a fun thing to do, actually. You been jumping back into consciousness since puberty? Yeah. No, but I mean, like, watching yourself as you fall asleep all the way up to that moment is a pretty cool thing. So when you've learned to do that, then construct before yourself mentally a definite scene, which you must hold firmly in mind. Then as you're falling to sleep, hold this scene before you, and at the very last moment before you fall asleep, consciously transfer yourself into the scene. In other words, step into the picture. And if you've developed yourself to the requisite point, you will be enabled to carry over an unbroken consciousness into the dream state. And in this way, you have a perfect continuity of thought. There is no break in the consciousness. You step into the dream picture and go on dreaming consciously. Now that is something I would be into. That's not the same as waking up in a dream. That's scrying almost from hypnagogia into a dream that you actually want to have. That's pretty cool. That is the process of dreaming true. And after this dream is fully enacted, then you should remember perfectly all that has transpired during the sleep period. Yeah, because you never you never get to, no matter how much you do dream work, you never get to have the exact dream you want. There's always some other crap going on. And when you do lucid dreaming work, most of the time, you're not there at the start of it. You're waking up in the middle of it. You don't remember even how you got there. You just know, oh shit, I'm dreaming. This would be really cool, because then you could just think about, maybe thinking about melding, maybe thinking about whatever you want to think about. And if you can hold yourself right at that moment of hypnagogia to the fall, and then project yourself into that scene, well, then you can have the dream you want. Anyway, only that weirdo woman set up the astral sandwich melding rule. It doesn't have to be 3 people. I'm too old for threesomes. It's too much work. It's too much work in the physical world. I can't imagine what it would be like in the astral world. I wonder if Mr. Carrington knows how almost perfectly in harmony his instructions for dreaming true are with the method of dream control used to induce the astral body out into space. To enact a part in that dream, one step beyond what Mr. Carrington has here given is the accomplishment of moving out of the astral body to a locale, which the subconscious hitches up with the dream formulated by the conscious. I bet you that's where Robert Monroe got that word from, locale. Later, when you learn the method of promoting projection by the conscious, you'll do this. So later, when you learn the method of promoting projection and learn how to induce factors which are positive or favorable to projection, you'll be able to cause the astral actually to step out into the dream. and will either remember all that has transpired on awakening or will become wide awake during the act of the dream. And in that case, the dream vanishes and you are there, projected. That sounds exactly like scrying. Because was kind of taught this too, to do this with Tatua cards. I don't think it's the exact same thing, but you could do the same thing with tarot cards, Tatua cards, armadillos, anything. You could stare at anything or think about anything or focus on anything. And if you put yourself in a state of trance deep enough and you're relaxed enough, you could get him to hypnagogia pretty easy. The problem is, and what he's talking about, the real problem is holding your awareness up to the very last millisecond before you fall into that dream. Because we usually fall unconscious in and out way before, like in between, you know. So this, you will recall, was the formula followed by Dr. Van Eden, which brought him such successful results. Care must be taken, however, in constructing the dream, and the dream must be fully thought out by the conscious mind and repeatedly constructed before the subconscious can reproduce it accordingly. Now, the nature of the dream to be produced is important and should be built upon lines of action which correspond to the actions which the astral phantom naturally follows on exteriorizing, so that the sensation in the dream will agree with the sensation produced by the action of the phantom, should that phantom awaken. What the? I think I know what he's saying there, but that's the nature of the dream to be produced is important and should be built upon lines of action which correspond to the actions which the astral phantom naturally follows. It's like you're tricking your astral body, so to speak. So the nature of the dream must necessarily be that of plausibility, so that the sensation of the dream is enjoyed by the dreamer and is also in harmony with the sensation of the out-of-body experience. Then, if separation be induced, the sensations and emotions will be pleasant, should the phantom begin to regain consciousness. A dream which agrees in action and sensation with the same action and sensations produced by the out-of-body experience will tend to pull the phantom out. That's pretty freaking interesting, actually. Action, of course, means action of self in the dream. So one must have movement of self outstanding in the dream, must always be participating in the dream, not merely standing back and looking on. Still stronger promotive factors to projection will be induced if the dream be of this nature and centered around a desire or a suppressed desire. Later, I shall give specific directions for producing astral projection by dream control. Now, do it now. I don't want you to talk about it later. Do it now. Only that weirdo woman set up that astral sandwich melding rule? Yeah, she did. Why do we forget our dreams? Because according to Voldoon, we forget our dreams because both the body that goes, it's not the brain, so both the bodies and the etheric, I guess, mind fall asleep, right? So we forget it. Because in the beginning of this book, he talked about it's not, our brain isn't our mind. The mind is the mind. And that thing actually goes cataleptic itself and goes unconscious or falls asleep. And this is what dreams are, when our etheric body goes unconscious too, and the astral dreamy part of ourself goes to play. So re-waking back up isn't like, it seems like the snap of a finger, but it's really coming back out of that crazy dreamy world into the etheric, waking up in the etheric, coming back into the physical, and then waking up both bodies. I know it sounds crazy to talk about it like that, but I mean, according to him, that's kind of how it works. Because it's not us. It's not our brain, and it's not anything in our physical body, according to Voldoon, that keeps us alive and awake to begin with. It's actually our etheric double. So if you took our etheric double and just it left, our body would just be like, it would do nothing. And no matter how many scientists hooked it up to electric things and tried to turn it into a Frankenstein, without our etheric body, it would be nothing. It would just flop around and twitch, you know? Yeah. Like going from the mind then back to the brain. Yeah. Because the alive part of you, even though the physical body is, quote, alive, but the real conscious, awake person in command of that part of you is actually your etheric spirit that's running this thing, you know. That's why they can't figure out consciousness, because they think it's still in the brain. They've done experiments. Well, if you cut the brain in half and in 4 directions or whatever after the body dies, it puts out Wi-Fi signals, and they've done all kinds of stuff. But the only thing that they can get the body to do without the etheric conscious person in there is just flop and twitch. That's it. I mean, some nerves, they've learned how to like move certain muscles, but it's still like playing with, I don't know, it's not alive. And that Jane says, well, that answers the question about AI can't be sentient without. Yeah, like I'm not worried about, I mean, AI could probably make decisions in the future, you know, and rule a robotic body, but it's never going to have emotions ever. It's not going to have an astral body or an etheric double. It's not going to have a soul. It's just going to be a freaking program. It's a good point, Jane. So, a word of warning. If you're neurotic, easily influenced, and you lack will and are fearful, if you have any reason to believe yourself susceptible to obsession, if you live in an atmosphere of discord, do not try to practice astral body projection. If you are this type, never think within yourself and never watch yourself in the process of falling to sleep. Turn towards physical culture rather than culture rather than psychic culture. Why is he saying that? A word of warning. If you're neurotic, easily influenced, if you lack will and are fearful, if you have any reason to believe yourself susceptible to obsession, if you're always in an atmosphere of discord, don't try to practice astral body projection. Never watch yourself fall asleep. It was probably because it'll cause you trauma. You think that's why he's saying that? Because you think so highly of yourself and you're so focused on you and yourself and what's going to happen to you and your story all the time, that if your astral body actually watched you go unconscious and be like susceptible to all that, you might psychologically freak out. I take a different approach, Voldoon. I think people that are neurotic and have obsessions and all this other kind of stuff should do it. Maybe it'll learn them something, you know. Scare the shit out of them. Fear's a good thing sometimes. So, subjects of a nervous temperament are best suited for psychic experiments. Now, while everyone slightly discoincides during sleep or moves into the zone of quietude, those of a nervous temperament do so sooner, more easily, and exteriorize further than those of other temperaments. Temperament, after all, has much to do with projection. That's why some people can do it easily no matter how they're instructed and others can't. The neurotic types, not being bound so strongly to the physical body, are the best subjects for projection, although other types are not to be considered immune. So wait a minute, then who said this? I'm so confused right now. Didn't he just say a word of warning? I swear on everything. If you're neurotic, easily influenced. Okay, he didn't say nervous, though. This is nervousness. Okay, that's different. My bad. what time is it? Shit. Hereward Carrington, who has gone deeply into all phases of the occult, and whom I shall no doubt quote freely throughout this work, says in summing up the experiments of Dr. Charles Lancelin, a French scientist and occultist, quote, "The right or suitable temperament must be chosen for the experiment, and if this be not found, the experiment is liable to fail, or only succeed partially. Temperament must not be confused with character or mental makeup. Temperament is a psychological state produced by the predominance of an element, organ, or system in the human body. There are 4 chief types of temperament: nervous, bilious, lymphatic, and sanguine. And this is taught in the occult too. You can read this in Henry Cornelius Agrippa's books. I cannot believe Voldoon is talking about this. When I do the astral readings, the elemental readings that I have in the store or in the Patreon, this is the exact thing that I look for in people. But I don't call people nervous or bilious or lymphatic. You can call them hot and dry. They have words for it, right? Hot and wet, that's what I am. I'm sanguine, hot and wet. They have dry and cold, cold and wet. And that's what he's talking about here. I bet he learned this in the occult. There are 4 chief types of temperament: nervous, bilious, lymphatic, and sanguine. Of these, the nervous temperament is the best suited for psychic experiments of all kinds. The bilious is the most receptive. The sanguine is liable to hallucinations, both subjective and objective, while the lymphatic is the least suitable of all, from every point of view. Of course, one's temperament is usually a compound of all of these. It's never just one thing, so which are rarely found in their ideal state. But the predominantly nervous temperament is the one best suited for this test, as for all other psychic experiments. Now, there is at all times a certain outflowing of nervous force, or externalization of neuricity, as it is called, in all individuals. But this becomes very pronounced in certain types of individuals known as mediums or psychics. And in them, this force, which is thus radiated, can be measured by means of specially constructed instruments known as biometers or stenometers. Jesus, dude. Do you ever get the feeling like Voldoon might be one of those guys that you would sit down and have some tea with, and he would be really cool? But the whole time he's just trying to figure out to see if you're worth experimenting on like a rat. But the cool part is he's only going to experiment with you about projecting out of body. Now, this guy sounds like a mad scientist to me, even though a lot of what he says makes sense. Sounds pretty weird, gotta say. Still, this is a fascinating read. Just, man, we got to really look into this older stuff. I know we have a lot of cool modern teachers. We really do, and I love them. But just like old 80s movies and older stuff, some of these old books are trippy, to say the least. Very informative. And kind of weird at the same time, right? Where we got to do the radio thing. So if you got to use the restroom, now's the time to do it. God bless you. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band. Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store. Comms down as tight as we can get them, right? Welcome back to Lighting the Void. If you're listening on the radio, God bless you. TalkStream Live, the Paranormal Radio app, tune in, Live 365, everywhere the Fringe FM is listed, streamer, all that stuff. And if you want to chat with us, you can chat on YouTube. If you want to call in, it's 501-777-5631. Jen, I hope you're okay. Anyways, back to it. This guy's tripping me out, man. Valdoon. I'm sure he's passed away by now, but I've never read any book on astral travel or even looked into anything that talks about the out-of-body experience. See, he's even gotten to my head. Experience. Like this. He's even talking about the occult temperaments, right? Jane, which temperament is best suited here? Said sanguine. Actually, he said sanguine, which would be hot and wet, right? He said sanguine is, what did he say? Sanguine people tend to hallucinate, see things that aren't there a little bit more. Both subjective and objective. So the most receptive is the bilious person, which I think is the nervous wreck. Well, we're going to find out. But he does say that most people's temperament is usually a compound of all these things which are rarely found in their ideal state. But the nervous temperament is the one best suited for this test.
What I'm saying is, it's like I'm reading this text and I think that this guy might have kidnapped a few people and tested on them astrally, like plugged them up. It sounds creepy for some reason. Like he plugged them up to wires or something and started testing them, you know. Just maybe not, but the way he writes about it is kind of creepy. As for all other psychic experiments, and so now there is at all times a certain outflowing of nervous force or an externalization of neuricity. That's what we said before the break, right? Now this is actually in all individuals, but this becomes very pronounced in certain types of individuals known as mediums or psychics. And all of this energy can be related to biometers or stenometers. I don't know shit about that. I didn't know you could measure psychic energy. Several instruments of this kind have been devised by French experimenters. They show that there is a repulsive force generated from one side of the body and an attractive force from the other side. And normal human beings, these forces should be equal, but when they're not, odd things are likely to happen in their immediate environment. Their relative power may be tested by means of these instruments. Although, as Lancelin has pointed out, there's an inflowing and outflowing of cosmic energy or force in all types during the waking. So during the waking hours, I guess the outflow exceeds the inflow, especially in the nervous type. So when sleep intervenes, which is nature's way of charging up the condenser, the astral condenser separates from the physical body. I got a theory about some of this stuff. There's stuff like this that's buried deep into alchemy too, actually. The nervous type, requiring the greatest amount of recharging, moves out of coincidence of the body more easily, sooner, and to a greater distance than any other person. So if you're a nervous wreck, then this is going to work perfect for you. When outside chord activity range, the phantom is free. So once the phantom advances beyond chord activity range, it is free and subject to its own will. There is no longer any liability to eccentricities of the senses, instability of body, or other complications which are present before reaching this superior position. These complications do not all disappear in an instant, but gradually as the body has been advancing, and when projection eventually reaches a certain point, the cable has diminished to its minimum caliber, resembling a long strand of spiderweb and showing no activity whatever. Regardless of apparent deadness or laxity of the cord, there is necessarily an intrinsic flow of cosmic energy from the astral or animate to the physical, the inanimate. But this flow of force by no means compares in quality with what is before this advancement. I've never heard that before. You know, and the funny thing about it is when I get around nervous people that are real kind of twitchy, I just want them to relax. But according to Verdun, if you can get these people to at least relax enough in this hypnagogic state, they can project they can get way out, not only out of body, but way outside the astral chord range too. So in the type of projection which is distant and prolonged, the physical may take on a cadaverous aspect. Doesn't that mean dead? The cosmic energy it receives being meager in amount. It can almost seem like it's dead. The person's dead. There are accounts of people who, while projected, have been thought that they were dead. But this is rare, of course, but the physical body may have all the appearances of being dead, but it's not. When projection is of this type, the temperature of the torpid member may take an unbelievable fall, the condition much resembling hibernation in animals. I'm telling you, man, does this guy not sound like he's experimenting on people? Like he's just waiting around a corner with some chloroform to snatch somebody? Nervous people are more air, right? Mental energy, not as grounded. So makes sense, I guess. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But listen to what he sounds crazy, man. As a rule, the subconscious controlling power knows exactly what it's doing. It is a far better detector of conditions than the conscious mind. Okay. So the astral projector can actually get lost. I've had people ask me about this too. You know, I don't know. I've never gotten lost. But according to Voldoon, you can. And you may wonder if this projection is not, after all, a dangerous practice, because you can get lost. You may wonder if the phantom, once it's free, cannot lose itself, or if it might not remain at a distance far too long of a period of time and just allow the physical body to die. Now, as a rule, the subconscious controlling power knows exactly what it's doing, and it's a far better detector of conditions than the conscious mind is. Do you think that one could project himself into the free state outside chord activity range and be conscious there and refuse to come back, and thus allow his physical body to die? Well, we would never know the answer to that, would we? Naturally, one who has never projected may seize upon this idea, but he will find, when he attempts to stay away too long from the physical body, that he cannot retain consciousness. And honestly, let's think about it. If somebody astral projected long enough and got far enough away from the body, and they were like, nah, I don't want to come back, They probably wouldn't. I mean, you wouldn't know. There's no way to know. They can't come back and tell you, I decided not to come back. So there's no way to prove that, right? Now, some authorities believe that a projector can become lost while outside of the body. This is not true. Again, these same authorities will tell you that the astral body can project to distant and unfamiliar places by an effort of will. This is true. And being true, the projector cannot become lost, for he can return to his physical body by willing to do so. Anytime, even if he is lost, even if he doesn't know where he is. So the subconscious mind can intervene in the twinkling of an eye. And that should be in quotes, right? Because we've seen that in Scripture. And the twinkling of an eye, and pull back the phantom instantly from any distant place into chord activity range, whence it is pulled back into the physical. In fact, it is the subconscious power that speeds the phantom to distant places and back again, even though consciousness be never missed during that infinitesimal moment. One can be walking about outside chord activity range, perfectly conscious, and suddenly find himself under subconscious control and moving towards the physical to interiorize. So you see, it makes no difference whether one does get outside chord activity range and is free. He's still under the operating subconscious will. You may have nursed the opinion that one might become disassociated from his physical counterpart and wander into some strange world in the astral, and being conscious not have the insight or sense of direction to find his way back to the body. This is impossible. The subconscious will can shoot one back into the physical almost before the thought of getting back has fully completed itself. You may think that the conscious mind is in itself wonderful. You may fancy that you can think and act with rapidity. But once you have become conscious in the astral body, you will realize at what a snail's pace the conscious mind moves in comparison with the superintelligence, which is the powerful subconscious. So if you undertake to develop projection of the astral body, you need have no fear of becoming lost in the astral realm. There you go. According to Voldoon, you're okay. So how does the physical body recharge during projection? Now, we've had people on the show that have said that. You can stay out real long. I can heal the body. I can go to astral places and my body will heal, etc., etc. But how does the physical body become recharged while you're doing this? So Voldoon goes on to say, I have on different occasions observed that while one is in the free state, no matter whether in the immediate environment of the shell or remote from it, he will be shot back within chord activity range at intervals, and at once the physical body will begin to respire in a stronger manner. It is plain that the subconscious has an eye on the condition of the physical body, as well as everything else, and that the condenser of cosmic energy, the phantom, is brought back to charge up the physical through the medium of the cable, which has increased in size as the body approaches one another and is carrying over a stronger line of force. All right, so let me just think about the reason of all this. So if we're considering the astral cord to be real, according to Voldoon, the closer you are to your body, the thicker this cord is, right? The farther out you are, it gets so small you can barely see it, and it's like spider webs. And yet he's saying that you can never go too far, and no matter how thin the cord is, you can come back to your body in an instant. So then what's the purpose, honestly? What is the purpose of the cord being thick or thin? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Why would it be thicker when you're closer to the body and thinner when you're out? I get that. It makes total sense if you're looking at it from like a regular, physical, reasonable point of view or logical point of view, but from an astral point of view, or from what he's saying, that you can never get lost, that'll never happen, you'll never disassociate yourself from the cord, then why doesn't it stay then that means it should stay the same thickness. Am I making sense? Because if it's getting thinner and thinner and thinner, then obviously there's an end to this sumbitch somewhere. Or am I just need to go back to the 4th grade here? Anyways. He said, how the physical is recharged during projection. So I have on different occasions observed that while one is in the free state, no matter whether in the intermediate environment or remote from it, he just comes back super fast at intervals, and at once the physical body will begin to respire in a stronger manner. So it is plain that the subconscious has an eye on everything, and it's no matter how far away, it's in control. So in his book, The Higher Physical Development, Carrington has said, this question of projection of the astral body is a very important one, because in the first place, it is one of the most interesting of all psychic experiments, and is, in one sense, the object of attainment of all 3 schools of yoga, the occult, and the psychics. They all endeavor to arrive at very much the same result by different means, and they attain it in different degrees of self-consciousness. When the yogi has obtained the degree of perfection in which he can project his astral body at will, he can travel to great distances and see and hear distant events, which accounts for the Hindus and their extraordinary power of knowing things which are happening at a distance, and also renders possible voluntary intermittent for long periods of time, like they've been buried for long periods of time, and so forth. So the astral being removed from the physical. There's actual cases of that from India and stuff. So the body of sensation being entirely gone, the physical body merely keeps up its vegetative functions for the time being, sufficiently to allow life, in some sense, to remain in it. But you see, the physical body is supported on this theory by a continuous life current, which travels to it from the astral body, and through this astral cord or connection, connecting it with the astral. And after he is revived and has been restored from the trance state, the yogi claims to remember the experiences which he has passed through during this period of intermittent, which he was apparently dead to the outer world. In her commendable work, My Experiences While Out of My Body, Cora L.V. Richmond has said, I became aware of being led to where the earthly form was still breathing, being cared for, and imbued with breath by a guardian spirit and by devoted friends in human life. From this we learn, and it's true, that friends and the invisible realm can and many times do lend a helping hand to the projected medium, which naturally is a great asset in conquering this phase. What? Yeah, but none of that proves shit. But I mean, there are cases of it, though, right? And you've seen that, like, some really devoted yogis, what they look like. Like, they don't eat. Their bones, like, they're just bone and skin, and they're astral projecting all the time. It's kind of crazy. It's hard to watch. It's hard to look at some of it, to be honest with you. Just that amount of physical, I guess you could say, to them it's not. It's not really like physical neglect. But to me, it just looks so unhealthy. It looks so like they're being tortured. But they're doing it to themselves, so whatever. So there's one inconsistency found in this testimony of Mrs. Richmond, however, which is that her guardian spirit is credited with imbuing the senseless body with breath, quote, breath. Now, we've already learned that the force which regulates breathing is transmitted from the astral body to the physical through the astral cord. Well, you've already told us that, but that doesn't mean that's true. To imbue the earthly counterpart with life is the ultimate purpose of the astral cord. Okay, there we go, finally. Because that's what I was thinking, like, what the hell is its purpose a while ago? If it gets thinner and thicker and you're saying it never snaps, never breaks when you're astral traveling, then why do we even have it? And he finally says it here. To imbue the earthly counterpart with life is the ultimate purpose of the astral cord. Friends in the invisible world can aid. Of this there can be no doubt, but the power of respiration comes through the astral cable. It is probable that Mrs. Richmond, beholding a friend watching over her, assumed that what she has said was true. When you're out of body, is not dependent upon spirit. So astral exteriorizations, getting out of body, doesn't depend upon spirits in any way, yet spirits can assist you. Projection can take place without a mortal or spirit ever nearing the physical form. Well, yeah, the directing power lies within the individual himself. So you don't need spirits to get you out of body or to help you. Yeah, like an umbilical cord, like some kind of astro-umbilical cord. Star astral, which is what that means. Star umbilical cord, right? It is evident that Mrs. Richmond took it for granted that the guardian spirit was responsible for the breathing process. It has been shown how, during projection into the free state, the phantom or etheric double is brought back at intervals to recharge the physical. Further searching into Mrs. Richmond's experiences reveals the fact that she was, after all, aware of this line of force operating between the bodies. For in other places she says, quote, "These periods of calling my attention to and visiting the body were brief, but just enough to keep the vital spark alive." A student in attempting this phase should never forget that the superintelligence which performs the seeming miracle is within himself. He need never suppose that in undertaking his development he is entrusting his life to the conscious intelligence of anyone other than himself, either mortal or in the spirit world, although he should be thankful for any aid that others may render him. It is the superintelligence within him which handles the situation, and if he even forms the idea that he must depend upon others in the spiritual, he will probably never achieve his aims. To accomplish results, therefore, do not go outside yourself, go within yourself. Quote, "I am a jealous God," says the Bible. "The God within you is also likewise, and if you do not depend upon his wisdom, but believe it to be found in other spirits, he will not act upon you favorably." Didn't know Voldoon was going to go there. But think about it. How many times did Christ say, "Oh no, that person's not dead, but sleeping," in those stories? You know, the people that came to him twice that I can recall of, "Oh, they're dead, they're dead. Help me, help me." He's like, "They're not dead, they're just sleeping." There are, of course, exceptions to all rules, but in following the usual course of life, we depend upon the general trend and not upon the exceptional. And although the subconscious, during a projection, almost invariably carries itself with omnipotent dignity, there is always the possibility of some complication. The controlling intelligence may occasionally make mistakes. Oh, thanks. But when it does so, it is because of some foreign influence. So you can definitely depend on other things to mess shit up, though, right? So if there are recorded cases of mediums having met with unfortunate results or even death, it is because of the exceptional. Cora L.V. Richmond is said to have remained projected in the astral for many days. I got to look her up. Let's look this woman up. Hamid Bey, the youngest of Egyptian fakers. Hamid Bey is the youngest of the Egyptian fakers, whose marvelous demonstrations of the power of the mind over the body have startled the Western world, has undertaken several prolonged public burials. They buried him alive several times. He remained buried an hour in Atlanta, Georgia, 3 hours in Inglewood, 7 hours in San Diego, and etc., without any coffin having been placed directly in the ground, with the earth covering his face and body in the presence of skeptical newspaper men. Accounts of these burials were published in the press at the time and are available to any interested reader. Yeah, but he could have been doing like that David Blaine stuff too, you know? There could have been some other trick you weren't aware of. Just saying. You could be right, though. Although these performances may strike the average spectator as almost unbelievable, such demonstrations are by no means uncommon in the Orient, and hundreds of similar cases have been reported by travelers returning from India, Egypt, and other Eastern countries. Many of these burials were under excellent conditions, the whole procedure being controlled by skeptical witnesses. You think that. I don't know. I have to remain skeptic of it, but it's only a healthy skepticism. Now, some years ago, a celebrated person from the province of Lahore, India, was buried for a period of 30 days under the supervision of Prince Ranjit Singh and Sir Claude Wade. The guy was placed in a sack after entering the state of catalepsy, which was securely tied, and the sack was then placed in a box, which was locked, the keys being kept by the British general. The box was then deposited in a brick vault, and the door of which was sealed with Ranjit Singh's seal, and a guard of British soldiers was detailed to guard the vault day and night. Y'all should fact check this for me. Look this up. What's this guy's name? Oh shit, what's his name? It doesn't say, it just says some guy. What's his name? Anyways, if I find it, I'll drop it in the chat. So the box was deposited in a brick vault, the door of which was sealed by the Ranjit Singh, the prince's seal, and a guard of British soldiers was detailed to guard that thing for the day and night. So at the end of 30 days, the vault was opened, the box and sack unfastened, and the guy, very emaciated but still alive, was resuscitated by his friends. If projection of this type were not fully governed by an all-knowing intelligence, the body would surely have been neglected, and should the unusual intervene, should the astral body not be pulled back within chord activity range from time to time while he's under to recharge the physical, death would have been the natural consequence. Can't you go without food for like 30 days or something? Something like that. Pretty close to it. You go without water for 7, food with almost like 30, right? Yeah, he's saying, okay, so just to clarify, he's saying that they've developed the ability to understand how to astrally project. So they go out of body while they're under, and from time to time, 3 weeks, close to 30, 21 days, okay. So they go out of body from time to time, and they come back and go in body. So to recharge the physical, like he was saying earlier, that's what recharges the physical body. So you go out and you play around long enough, then you come back and you visit your body just for a little bit, long enough to where it'll recharge your physical body, and then you go back out again. Because he states that the astral body is the thing, the very life breath of the physical body. It's what charges it, nourishes it, keeps it alive. Food is a thing that only helps our cellular, I guess, tissue stuff, right? But the astral, while we're sleeping, is what recharges it, so to speak. That's his theory. I'm not stating that as a fact. It is interesting, though. So it's obvious to Verdun that during an extensive and prolonged projection, the material counterpart might assume the characteristics of a corpse, and that the temperature drops exceedingly low, even to such an extent that the misunderstanding people of the world would pronounce the subject dead. Now, I have concluded, as the result of a study of the subject, that the heart may actually cease beating for some time, and yet the astral cord may not be disconnected. Now, naturally, this condition could not exist long before the cord would snap. In a recent press article, the head of the American Medical Association stated that resuscitation is sometimes possible after hours of apparent death. Now, this is in the 1920s. You guys have to remember that. Mr. Carrington has written several books on death and has summarized many cases of premature burial. There can be no doubt, says this authority, that many hundreds of persons have been buried alive during the centuries which have preceded us. Oh, that's creepy. Societies for the prevention of premature burial have actually been formed in England, America, etc. Cases of trance, catalepsy, suspended animation, etc. were mistaken for death before our more modern methods of diagnosis were introduced. Historic accounts and the statements of returning spirits, if this testimony may be accepted as probable, seems to indicate that the astral line of force severs more rapidly at death with some individuals than with others. And it's probable that we exercise too much haste in soliciting the services of the undertaker, pronouncing people dead too soon. When someone is pronounced dead, and as the saying goes, not allowing the corpse to get cold. Yeah. That probably did. But you have to think about it. Even if astral travel wasn't a real thing, like that had to have happened anyways, a long time ago, you know, before medicine kind of got better at pronouncing people dead. But staying out of body for like being dead or looking like you're dead for 30 days or so, I don't know. That's something we got to do a show on. I got to look into that. There are many records of people who have been pronounced dead and returning to life, and there's always such a possibility if the astral cable be still intact, even though it's usually exceptional. Exteriorization might be enduring. The physical appears dead or cadaverous, and an embalmer might have completed his work. Oh, dude, this is freaky. An embalmer might have completed his work before the termination of a prolonged projection. So in one book, which has the endorsement of prominent spiritualists, a spirit claims to have been earthbound and related that he was held in this condition because a mere thread was holding him to the physical. This thread was holding him to the physical counterpart for many months after the burial. How much truth there may be in this account, I do not know. Now, in the Bible, there are several accounts of individuals who were brought back to life. Take, for example, Christ's resurrection of his friend Lazarus. If Lazarus were actually dead and the astral cable was disconnected, then Christ did actually perform a miracle. But if the cable was still engaged, it was an apparent miracle that the resurrection was merely a resuscitation. Christ was a marvelous occultist and seer, the peer of mediums, and was a friend of Lazarus. Might it not be possible that Lazarus was an astral projector? Maybe Christ taught these people the mysteries of astral projection. There seems to have been some misunderstanding on the part of the disciples as to whether Lazarus was really dead or not. Christ, first of all, told his followers that Lazarus was not dead. The sickness is unto death. Next, he told them that Lazarus was asleep. Our friend Lazarus sleepeth. but I go now that I may wake him from sleep. Christ next went to the grave where Lazarus lay, a cave with a stone upon it. He ordered the stone to be removed, and with a loud voice cried, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth. Could not a similar demonstration be given today by a hypnotist and an astral projector if they were really good at it? Another Bible instance of resuscitation and the bringings to life of a certain ruler's daughter. Yeah, that's the other story, right? And he cometh to the house of a ruler of the synagogue, and seeth the tumult, and them that wept and wailed greatly. And when he was come in, he said unto them, Why make ye this ado, and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleepeth. And they laughed him to scorn. But when he had put them all out, he taketh the father and the mother of the damsel, and them that were with him, and entered in where the damsel was lying. And he took the damsel by the hand, and said to her, Talitha cumi, which is being interpreted as, Damsel, I say unto thee, arise. And straightway the damsel arose and walked. Well, those people back then might have thought, yeah, I mean, that could be totally possible. It could have been just a child that had been astral projecting for a long, long time, Who knows? For these few singular demonstrations, Christ gained the reputation of being capable of resurrecting the dead, but in every case, Jesus himself stated that the subjects were not dead, but sleeping. If the persons were literally dead, if the line of force had actually been severed, the astral cord had been severed, and still they were brought back to life, is it not a wonder that more were not likewise revived? Surely there were others, begging to be reunited with their loved ones, innocent children crying for their mothers, lovers begging for their sweethearts who lay in death, pathetic mourners all about, and yet only a few were resurrected. That's a good point. Why didn't he bring everybody back from the dead, There's much evidence to sustain the belief that those who were restored were still on the astral plane, but it's not necessary to go back to the Bible times to find accounts of those who have been thought dead, were miraculously restored to life. Such things occasionally happen in every generation. Now, knowing this to be true at one time, in France, bodies of those pronounced dead were first taken to a morgue, there to lie under watch for a definite time before burial was permitted. Thus, it was hoped to avoid the possibility that any of the victims might be prematurely buried. Damn. So not many years ago, in a little Iowa town here in the United States, funeral services were taking place. The victim lay in state in the church, and as her friends were taking the last views of the remains, blood was seen oozing from the nose of the corpse. The woman came back to life and lived for many years afterward. This writer is acquainted with trustworthy persons who can swear to the truth of this incident. How is that possible after they embalm her, though? Like, wouldn't that kill her, even if she came back? Unless I'm missing something here. Wouldn't the embalming process, this is some weird shit, man. So all this, of course, relates directly to Vildoon's trying to make a point here. All of this relates directly to the phenomena of the astral or out-of-body experience. Once the astral cable severs from the physical body, the body is on the road to dust whence it came. What has been said in the preceding paragraphs regarding projection need not frighten the student who is attempting to develop. The chances that the subconscious will go wrong are small and very insignificant. Severe sickness in which life is a matter of uncertainty is usually the cause of such disastrous results as have been depicted, and in the case that projection is brought about involuntarily as well. It may readily be seen that although sickness is an incentive towards projection of the astral body, one should not be in too subnormal a condition physically when attempting a prolonged astral projection. I gotta get my bearings here. This is something I think we should do a show on. Once I've looked it up enough, how many people have came back from the dead, reported being dead and came back like this? Like how many people for real? trying to scare off the weaklings with that kind of talk. Yeah. Well, everybody always, and I've been talking about this for years, and there's always a group of people that they're fearful. They always wonder, like, well, what if this happens? Well, what if I die? Or what if there's always a set of people that are going to do the what if thing and talk themselves out of this experience and don't get me wrong, fear is a natural thing, and it's only coming from a place of self-preservation. But that, to me, is almost like, well, I want to surf, but what if the sharks bite me? Well, I want to ride a bike. Well, what if I get hit by a car? It gets to that point it's like that on every level for me. What you need to really ask yourself is, do you really want to have an out-of-body experience? Or do you just like talking about it? And which is cool. If you don't want to have an out-of-body experience, that's okay too. You don't have to have an OBE to be a spiritual person or fit in with the weird OBE people or whatever. Like, if it freaks you out and you're scared of it, don't do it. But I think some people do incite a lot of questions to kind of make excuses for the fact that they're just afraid of it, So Joe, has someone ever astral traveled and met with someone else, also astral travel, both communicated with each other, which would prove the astral is not tripping? Yeah, I think so. I think they have. I've listened to quite a few Monroe's tapes, but what was that guy's name that came on the show? He has his own YouTube channel. Glasses, ponytail, kind of cool guy, pretty high strung dude. That guy told me that he did that with one of his friends. Like, him and a woman were doing that. They were going out of body, talking to each other, coming back and explaining everything. But still, like, if you do that, there's no way to prove it other than to yourselves, But I definitely think you can, because you don't lose consciousness. If you have if you have a lucid dream, you lose consciousness when you fall asleep. You start dreaming and then you regain consciousness in the dream. That's different. If you have remote viewing, is just viewing stuff somewhere else. But if you have an out-of-body projection from the time, like, say, you lay down to go to sleep or whatever, you never lose consciousness. Never. You never fall asleep. You never forget or anything like that. So if you and another person can manage to do that at the same time, roughly the same time, which the semantics of it is probably harder than what you think. But if you could do it at the same time, meet at the same place, and both kind of do it the same way, then I think you could definitely do that for sure. Are you saying two astral travelers meet each other, or just one person go out and meet someone that's passed away? I think you were asking, let me go back to your question. Has someone ever astral traveled and met with someone else also astral traveled? Yeah, I believe they have. I think Thomas Campbell's actually talked about that too. So I'm confused. I'm still have some questions about the astral cable here, but Voldoon says, just like what you said, Jamie, he says the astral cable is akin to the umbilical cord. So now that we've compared projection with death, let us for a moment compare it with birth. Do not the astral body and the astral cable afford striking similarities to the newborn physical body and the umbilical cord? And after all, which process is more the mysterious? So far as understanding the intelligence behind either of these processes is concerned, they are in the same category. It has always occurred to me as inconsistent for the skeptic to refer to birth as natural and astral projection as supernatural, when he can explain neither. It is merely this, what we call natural, is natural only because we have become familiar with it. For even the natural is often inexplainable. because he is unfamiliar with the phenomenon of astral projection. The unbeliever scorns the idea on the ground that it is supernatural. Still, physical birth with the body existing at the end of the cord is called natural, simply because he's familiar with it, not that it's any less mysterious than astral projection. But such is the way of the human mind. The supernatural undoubtedly does not exist. It is the unfamiliar, or I call the void, right, which is called supernatural. A grain of sand is as mysterious as a planet, a physical body as mysterious as an astral body, the umbilical cord as mysterious as the astral cord. So when we think of that wonderful organism, the astral cord, and wonder at its ability to sustain life, there may be some satisfaction or dissatisfaction in knowing that the astral and umbilical cords are strikingly similar. Made a good point. That is a pretty good point. Pretty much like everything, because you got to think about it, right? Like if we were born into a society where everybody was getting out of body all the time, which I do think we'll get there, and I think Manly P. Hall talks about this too quite a bit, that eventually we'll reach a state of consciousness where we'll be able to get out of body all the time. It'll be like a thing that we tell our kids, hey, when you go to sleep, put your body to sleep and go, play in the astral realm. Right? You need to recharge your body, that kind of thing. If we did it enough, if it was natural, quote natural, it would be familiar. We wouldn't look at it like some type of supernatural thing. And if you think about what he's saying there, that's kind of true, because microwaves used to be called supernatural. Electricity used to be called supernatural. Radiation used to be called supernatural. We can go down the list. And if you took a freaking cell phone back to the 1800s and told them that I can talk to people that aren't even here without any wires. 2, I can take pictures and get on the internet and send them to other people across the world in a split second, in an instant. And they would think you were a freaking nutcase. And what would you say to them? Well, how is this done? Through ones and zeros. They wouldn't even understand that. You mean on and off, alpha and omega? Full and void, 1 and zeros? Yeah, but how do you get the ones and zeros across the world in a second? Well, through light. Light, what do you mean? Light, fiber optic cables. We transfer that information through light. And they would be like, oh, you mean like the sun, like the stars? Yeah, kind of like that. Well, that's supernatural. You'd be a witch to them. But nowadays, because we frequent it, kids are born and their parents have cell phones. It's not supernatural. It's just natural, Just like we don't freak out over slipping into dream world, even though that's good point. Even though that's a trippy concept, Imagine trying to explain fake boobs to people in the olden days. They didn't think it straight up sorcery. iPhones too. Fake boobs in the olden days would be sorcery for sure. That's sorcery now, especially if you have problems with them and you got to go get them fixed again. Just enjoy your natural boobs if you want. I don't know. Who cares? You get my age, you've seen it all. Felt it all, seen it all. But the thing is like, I think the astral I know astral projection and the out of body experience is like natural. To the point where I guess that I'm impatient. Like Tsudi says, I want everybody to do it right now. So it would just change the world. You would get burned as a witch. Yeah, you would. If you took a cell phone back in the 1800s, they would string you up quick. For sure. This guy has a device in his pocket that sends information across the world to another person through light. Alpha and omega, 1s and 0s, binary codes, he calls them. Through light. Yeah, you'd be called a witch. So hopefully, felt it all, seen it all. I definitely have, man. But hopefully, I would think, I'm hoping like in 50 years, or at least by the time my son's an old man, that we'll be bored with technology to the point, which that'll probably never happen, that everybody's getting out of body. They're like, dude, you remember the days when video games and the internet was the thing that entertained us the most? And nowadays, they'll be looking back on that like it's old times. Nowadays, everybody just astrally projects and gets out of body, you know, and goes and creates realities and plays in the spirit world, you know. Think about cyberpunk and the cyborg rejection drugs you need to stay alive. Damn, y'all got me thinking about all kinds of stuff. Like a Brave New World kind of thing, right? And yeah. All right, well, we got to get out of here. Thank you guys for, make sure you check out, if you're into the tarot, make sure you check out those long, deep lectures we're doing on the Tree of Life and the tarot on YouTube. Join the Patreon, support the show. That'll give you access to a bunch of stuff like the Deep Void Walkers, not the Deep Void Walkers, the Void Walkers podcast, behind the scenes stuff. Check out LTVpodcast.shop if you want to grab some shirts, support the show, damn it. And thanks for coming out and listening. I love you. Night night, sweet dreams.
Inside my head there's a little place left for you. What do you know? What do you know?